I had intended to stay off social media a little bit longer, but then yesterday the Toronto Star reported that parents and staff at the Toronto District School Board are pushing to ban drag queen storytime opt-outs. Yes, you heard that right. Some parents and staff are arguing not just that it should be permissible to have drag queen shows in our schools, but that parents should be unable to opt out their own children if they are uncomfortable with these performances or storytime sessions. I've done a few videos on drag queen storytime, and my position is pretty straightforward. I've argued that drag in general perpetuates regressive stereotypes of femininity, and I'm not convinced drag, even for adults, does great service to anybody. But drag storytime in particular takes those same concerns and then directs them towards young children as their audience. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Why do we so desperately need to show children drag? What is your argument here? It is just so unnecessary. And even if it isn't sexual, which sometimes it is, wouldn't it be safer to just not do it? The argument, of course, has been that drag exposes children to gender diversity. And that sounds great until you realize that this is a hollow argument because electing to participate in drag is not a gender identity. This is a hobby that some people enjoy, and others, such as myself, find pretty offensive. If you want to expose children to diverse gender expression, I think that this is a great thing. And we can do this by breaking down gender stereotypes and reminding our little girls that it's okay to like sports and construction toys and dressing in pants and a t-shirt if that suits your preferences. By showing her strong female role models who are not regressively stereotypical. We can remind our little boys that it's okay if they have feminine preferences and interests, and that engaging in those doesn't make them any less of a man. We can show them men who are nurturing and who are in touch with their emotions, and we can enforce that there is dignity in being a man with more effeminate tendencies. And if we must go all the way, we could show them diverse gender identities by introducing them to someone like me, a regular run-of-the-mill transgender individual who isn't even all that stereotypically feminine. Someone who presents both in attire and behavior as a relatively normal adult human. But instead, and for reasons that I still fail to fully grasp, some individuals have taken an obsession with exposing children to drag queens. Do drag queens really teach young boys that it's okay to behave and present in a more feminine manner if that's what comes naturally to them? No, they really don't, because drag by its very nature is inherently performative. If anything, utilizing drag queen storytime as your mechanism to demonstrate gender diversity teaches young boys that it's acceptable for them to present feminine only if done in an over-the-top performative fashion. I want to highlight that point. How many movies over the years utilize the trope of a man presenting as a woman in an over-the-top fashion? Mrs. Doubtfire, Hairspray, The Nutty Professor, White Chicks. The list is long, and what they all have in common is that they demonstrate our cultural attitude, that while it might be humorous for men to present effeminately, it certainly isn't normal or dignified. These characters are entertaining precisely because of their exaggerated femininity. Any woman could have played the mother in Hairspray, and yet they selected John Travolta for the role because of the entertainment factor achieved when a man presents in a feminine manner. It's like a high school jock wearing a dress and intense makeup as a performative Halloween costume. We all found that funny and entertaining in high school, didn't we? Actually, I for one didn't find that entertaining. I encountered those experiences as a boy with closeted transgender feelings. Those movies and those football players who made fun of femininity horrified me. They added to my shame about how I felt about my own feminine tendencies and solidified my understanding that there was something freakish, abnormal, and shameful about the behaviors and presentation that came most natural to me. Drag does not challenge this regressive narrative. It reinforces it. Drag is entertaining precisely because this is not how men are supposed to present. Your message when you show young children a drag queen presentation is not that we are all empowered to present however we want in everyday life. It's that it's okay for men to present effeminate so long as it's done performatively, because there is some sort of performative value in such embodiment. I find drag offensive and unhelpful, and I personally wouldn't want my children exposed to it. But I can accept that in order for our society to function, we must create space for differences of opinion. Maybe some people want to take their child to drag queen storytime, and I suppose that is their choice. That is, until you bring it into our schools, and now make it mandatory. And that's what gets me so worked up about what is being argued at the Toronto District School Board. The argument is not about whether or not we should be allowed to have drag shows in school. We are now apparently discussing whether or not they should be mandatory. Yes, mandatory! In the article, an anonymous Toronto District School Board staffer stated that drag is a joyful and celebratory form of gender expression, demonstrating in a fun way that gender expression is a fundamental human right, forms vital human rights education. And human rights education is not something you can opt out of, ever. This quote frustrates me to no end because it cleverly reframes the discussion into something that it's not. Let's decompose it. The first sentence, drag is a joyful and celebratory form of gender expression, is an opinion. I disagree with this opinion, but I suppose it's an opinion that can be held. The second sentence then states, demonstrating in a fun way that gender expression is a fundamental human right, forms vital human rights education. And this is just bad faith arguing. Educating on the importance of protecting gender expression and exposing children to particular forms of gender expression are not the same thing. And as we've already discussed, drag is not even a gender expression because being drag is not a gender identity. And then the last sentence, human rights education is not something you can opt out of, ever. So you have equated human rights education on gender expression with personally exposing children to a particular regressive form of such expression, then argued that it is thus mandatory and cannot be opted out of because gender expression is protected. What? This would be akin to arguing that in order to protect religious freedom, we must educate students not in why we protect religious freedom, but in the sacraments and practices of all religions and ensure students experience participating in the various ceremonies of them. Do you see the problem now? Anyways, I need to go because the first set of boxes from Amazon Prime Day have arrived and I have a long night of unpacking ahead of me before tomorrow's lot arrives. Quick end note. A few weeks ago, I took a break from social media and the separation has been fantastic. Many people assumed I left because of the toxicity on Twitter, and I was getting a bit too invested, so it was nice to refocus myself on the world beyond the retweet. But mostly, I left because over the last weeks, I unexpectedly found myself with 2 transgender teenagers under my care, both of whom are in the process of seeking testosterone and mastectomies. For those of you who follow my work, you'll know that this is a significant moral conflict for me, and while I've worked with plenty of families on childhood transition, being in the caregiver position has been an entirely different experience. Out of respect for the children, I knew I needed to focus on them and their needs 100%, so Twitter had to go. I won't be saying much more about this for the privacy of the children involved, though I might explore some of the things I learned in a future video.